So if, Mr. Chairman, if you could identify, are you the only person that's recusing yourself from this document?
Well, I'll open the floor, but I led with myself because I'd want to pass the gavel before I actually brought it up.
I have no issue discussing the matter, but I won't be able to vote on that. So that's the whole thing.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, my bad for not fully understanding. Did the member suggest that he's not going to vote, but we'll be able to discuss? Is that what I understood?
That's correct.
So, Mr. President, I hate the fact that we've broken up Mr. Miller's evening, but why don't we just leave it tabled here, and in light of the fact that this could be a current matter, maybe we just pull it up at the full council on Tuesday.
As far as I understood last time, we actually have it as all business, and I don't remember any recommitting by any recommitting decision by the chair, by the president of the council. So it was on the full council as an all business at one point. Yeah,
Mr. President, do you have any input, Mr. President, please?
I do. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So it was on the full council as old business on the 16th. On the 16th, it became clear that there was a need for more information and that there was going to be more deliberations. I then sent it back down to the budget committee. It has not been on the full council schedule since February 16th, either of the March dates. So it's currently here, not at the full council. But what the chairman says, if you're unable this evening to because of a lack of a quorum, to have a vote on this, certainly the option remains to put that back up as originally adopted under old business. The only reason why it was sent back down was I believe that there was more discussion. There was, and I believe that there was more information that was needed. And I do believe that as late as today, the city attorney did send to all the city councilors some follow-up information that I think that was requested by the member from District D. And so now we all have that information, and the intent was this is the place to have that discussion, and then to the full council. What I would urge the chairman and the members of the committee, I don't want to keep this thing here unnecessarily. This needs to be moved at some point. There needs to be some action. So I'm in a challenging spot where the preference is to do the work here and send it up. But if we can't get the work done here, we're going to have to send it up. But I will also tell you, we have an amazingly busy schedule coming up for this upcoming Tuesday. So
I actually requesting for a lot of information from the city attorney, the mayor's office, and so far so on. And they did send it, which I was glad. It's a great information, great response there. I wish we can have the discussion here with a result of sending it to the full council with either a recommendation or no recommendation, whatever the committee decides. But we won't be able to take a vote. The discussion can take place, no issues whatsoever. But in terms of sending it, I think that the only option we have at this point, even though we have the information that we request, and that's why I asked the city attorney to send it over to the committee or to everybody instead of the committee alone, because we know that this issue might come up in terms of voting. Discussion might take place, which I'm willing to discuss, but the vote is the issue.
Mr. Chairman, may I ask a question? Do you anticipate the fourth member to be with us this evening, the fourth member of the committee?
I have not heard from any other members that other than who are with us this evening.
I was going to recommend that if we knew that the fourth member was coming, that fourth member reached out to the chairman and said that they were going to be a little bit late, or perhaps that person thought there was a 7 o'clock start. This is a little off the start at 6:30, and it's easily understandable. that they may be here at a 7 o'clock, that maybe there's a workaround, which is wait till the end of the meeting, see if the member shows up. And I realize that may not be a good thing for the airport director, but maybe if the airport director would be good enough to be on call, so to speak, and maybe that there could be a way to alert him that his item is coming up. There's a fourth member. I might be out because I don't need to be here when we have a quorum. So I can certainly contact the airport director and say, there's a quorum, we have enough. Can you come back in? Does that work for the chairman?
Sure.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. President, I have no problem staying in the meeting, so I'll be present. Thank you for that opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. We appreciate your flexibility and your commitment to the process. Thank you.
Thank
you. So with that, we won't be entertaining any table matters at this point, and we will move to item 4221, the approval of funding for the Oliver Partnership School in the amount of $132,300,000, and is presented by Cynthia Paris, Superintendent of Schools. Let's see, I'm looking at the guest list here. I do see the superintendent is with us. There she is. Madam Superintendent, good evening. Welcome to the Budget and Finance Committee, and I turn the floor over to you for your comments and tell us why we're here tonight.
Thank you so much. I am joined by my colleagues from the school department, as well as the team that is working on this project. If you will entertain, we have a very brief presentation and an appeal to you. So I'm going to let the team screen share the presentation.
John, can you, I'm sorry for those at home, speaking to our technician extraordinaire, can you give her those permissions? Madam Superintendent, are you successful? Is it allowing you?
It should be to me, Alex Pitkin, please.
It's not actually me that's doing it. I'm communicating with our technician. John, can you hear us?
Excellent.
Mr. Pitkin, you should have that. You should have that ability now to share your screen.
Okay, right now it's still saying host disabled, but let me. Yeah,
we can engage into a discussion in the meantime while we're waiting for the answers.
Still nothing. Sorry.
Sorry, bear with me.
Should we, Superintendent, should we present? I mean, everyone should have received the slides, so maybe we can go through them. And unfortunately
yeah, we can do that. We can absolutely do that. So why don't we do that, Alex? And so apologies for not having the visuals in front of you. If you have them in your inbox, that might be helpful. So go ahead, Alex. The ideal is that we do share with you that presentation.
So Madam Superintendent, Mr. Pitkin, we are working on that, and we will get there. And I would, it is in our materials, so I would direct members that it is in your materials provided. And until we get the technological solution in place, you should follow along on your materials provided.
Then I'll start, since I have the screen open facing me, with the introduction slide that everyone should have available to them. And As you're aware, we received about a month and a half ago now approval from the Massachusetts School Building Authority Board of Directors to advance your project next level of design. That included a total project budget was confirmed at $132.3 million. Obviously, this requires local funding to be secured, which is the City Council's role. Oh, Adonis is now sharing.
Yep, there you go.
Okay.
So, okay, there we go to slide 2.
Thank you. So I don't know if you want me to still continue or if you wanted to go to the introduction yourself, Superintendent, or.
Thank you, Alex. I appreciate that. So this is a quick snapshot of where we are with this funding project, the existing project. As you see here, we're going to go through just a very brief snap here. The scope of the budget was approved back in February by the MSBA based on that schematic design. And to continue with the project, the local funding must be secured, and that is the matter before us today. In the next slide, we'll share with you why the funding, the project is needed. As you know, this is the first school in the area in 2 generations here. So bringing back the kindergartners back to the Oliver School is part of the educational plan to meet the needs of this community. And combining the current middle school with the elementary school is also part of the design. The current conditions of the school, if I can just be blunt and summarize, are quite fatal. It is literally imploding as we speak. I want to share with you in the next slide a video of the most recent issue we are experiencing with this building. A few weeks ago, we had to prematurely relocate our students because the heating system failed us. And now we are also underwater, literally underwater, the basement. So hopefully this video will capture that for you. Luckily, we had already move the students to our swing space, St. Mary's. And this video shows what happened just a few days after we had moved our students after the heating system had failed. It is a very tired building. It's certainly not meeting any safety codes that we need. And you can see that this is no place for our students and staff members to do any teaching and learning. Thank you, Danis.
We've had the good fortune of being able to connect with 2 historic commission charters in the city, the Lawrence Historic Commission and the Prospect Hill Community Historic Preservation Group as well. They are very much favor of the project. It's very easy to understand how important the existing Oliver School is within the context of this part of the city, and saving the southern portion of the building certainly is an easy win for the project. It's also important on the context side of the addition at the north also really restores an important urban edge facing onto O'Neill Parkway. And I think also the important connection that's maintaining the establishment of the Cardillo Way and bringing that up to snuff in terms of representing the private sacrifice for the city.
Hello, I'm Deborah Marai. I'm with Pink & Company. We're your owner's project manager for the project. So this slide is showing a bit of the project schedule. It actually started a number of years before this slide starts, but this shows us where we are right now in the process. Consigli Construction, who are our construction managers for the project, put this together. They came on board in November, and they have helped us through the schematic design process, and we're hoping to be able to move on to design development quickly, working with SMMA and with Consigli talking about ways that we could help to expedite construction with early bid packages to be the most efficient we can be with this project. And with the students being out of the school right now, we might have some opportunities if we can speed up the rest of the design process. But that, of course, is contingent on project funding. So on the next slide, we just are, again, on the right side, it's just where we're at in time, project approval from the MSBA on February 11th. And then here we are seeking the local funding approval. And if and when that happens, then there will be a project funding agreement executed with the MSBA, and the team can be authorized to commence design development. And on the left-hand side is just a summary of the information I know you all received, but we've talked about the approved total project budget of 132.3 million. This number was arrived. We had 3 cost estimates that were done at schematic design, including from Consigli, our construction manager, reconciled and did a value management exercise to bring this number down as far as we could. The MSBA reimbursement rate for this community on this project is 80% on eligible project costs, and eligible is the word here. There's a number of costs that are not eligible. They set caps on square footage costs and certain things that they will reimburse for. So the maximum total facilities grant that they approved at the February 11th meeting is the $58 million, but there is also some contingencies that are held outside for change orders or unforeseen conditions. And if those monies are used, which they aren't always necessarily, but if they're used and they're determined to be eligible, the maximum grant could go up to the 61,647. And that would be the maximum that the MSBA will reimburse for the project. And that's a summary of where we're at with the project funding.
Thanks, Ulanis.
Madam Superintendent, does that conclude the presentation, or?
It does.
So first of all, thank you for the presentation this evening. Thank you for your patience during our technical support. And I also want to thank you on all of our behalf for meeting with us in groups over the last couple of months. I know in my case, I believe I was with Councilor Payano, you exhausted our questions so at that time. But at this time, I will turn it over to my colleagues for questions or motions of the folks presented here this evening.
Yes, to you, Mr. Chair.
Councilor Rodriguez, and before Councilor Rodriguez starts, I am going to allow a public participation after the city councilors have their opportunity to ask questions. With that, Mr. Rodriguez, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Bashir. I have a few questions, just a definition that I don't know if I didn't get that. But I know that we are eligible to receive 80% of eligible cost on this project. So how the state defined eligible cost and how there is other cost that is not, or how we define, or what is the definition of other cost that is not covered under that 80%? So first, how they define eligible cost.
Deb, do you mind?
I can answer that as well, Counselor. This is Mark Iannello. In general, what happens is the MSBA, I think Deborah mentioned it earlier, but the MSBA has a cap on eligible expenses. And the primary cap that is the real problem for most municipalities, including Lawrence, is they cap the construction costs at $333 a square foot. Our estimated construction costs are, I believe it's $600 per square foot or more. So that's why, even though we're an 80% funded project, we're guaranteed a maximum of 46% of funding. So we've got to come up with the other 54. And that's if there are no disallowed costs. So 46% is the maximum that we can receive, but more than likely it'll be a little bit less than that.
So basically, the 80% is not 80% at all. It's based on the percent. It's based on the actual square foot, construction cost for the square footage.
That's right. And we have been approved. I mean, we do have in one of the, I think it's one of the schedules that one of the slides that Deborah had, there is a, or it's in your packet anyway, there is a breakdown of what the expenditures are or what the planned expenses are.
Yeah.
It's kind of like a spreadsheet. And at the bottom, you can kind of see on the second page of that, you can kind of see what they cover, what they don't. But the bottom line is the way it's extracted is the cap of $333. So they take all the construction costs and cap the amount of square feet that we have. I think it's listed here, 162,000 square feet, something like that. And that's how they come up with a maximum. So our agreement with the state, subject to funding, is the maximum grant amount is 58 and or 61 million out of the 132. So the city's got to come up with roughly, the city's probably going to come up with a 71 million anyway. If it's 60 million at the state, we'll be coming up with 71 million. And if the reimbursement, if some other costs are deemed ineligible, or there's some any change orders are not going to be covered. So once we begin the project, any change orders will be in the city's responsibility. So we'll be receiving a maximum of 46%. I hope it doesn't go down as low as 40%, but I've prepared some numbers in case it does.
So let me ask you to the team that is doing the design and so far. There is any construction around the state that is close to the 300 and something per square foot that is being built currently, or that is just a number that they use?
It is the 333. The MSBA will say that they're not expecting the project to be built for 333 per square foot. There's a number of items in the budget that they put caps on, and they do not necessarily say that that's what would be needed for a project like this. And certainly the 333 is an unrealistic number. You would not get a project for that. It is the cap based on how they fund projects throughout the Commonwealth that they've set, and they review the cap every so often. It hasn't been reviewed in a while, and there is no plan for it to be reviewed. Alex, I don't know if you want to add anything to some of the projects you've been working on in terms of, being above 33 per square foot.
It really hasn't been in that range in quite some time. Unfortunately, they always kind of tail behind inflation, unfortunately. And I think it's really important to also note, Councilor, that these are mandates by the legislature. So, we do talk about the Massachusetts School Building Authority as the authority and the entity, but getting any of these sort of valuations changed actually has to go through the body of the legislature to change. And so every community actually receives quite a bit less than their target percentage of reimbursement.
No, I'm just wondering about the 333, because 333 is not quite there. I mean, it doesn't make sense to fund projects at that price if we know that it's almost double or sometimes double.
If I can comment, Councilor, Sean Cronin, our former fiscal overseer, sits on the MSBA board. So we've had quite a few discussions about how the MSBA operates, and the $333 a square foot. They acknowledge that it's too low, but what they're trying to do is get as many building projects across the Commonwealth done. So if they raise that cap of 333, they'll get fewer projects done. So it doesn't really explain it, but it somewhat explains the idea behind why it is still at 333. They do acknowledge it's an issue, but they're trying to get as many projects around the state as they can, and providing significant and still provide significant effort on behalf of the state. And although it's only 46%, not 80, I'm not happy about it, but it is. They are the maximum state contribution here would be 52 million. That's a substantial sum of money, that the state is offering to give us. It may not be what we want, but that is a substantial amount.
So, and let me ask you the 46% that you mentioning, that's based on the total cost of the project, right?
Sorry, I muted myself. Yeah, it's a total project right now. The MSBA approved is 132,300,000, and again on that detailed spreadsheet, MSBA looked at all the cost items included in that 132 million, and they have a very sophisticated formula. It's a massive spreadsheet where they take the square footage and certain things they cover, certain things they don't. For example, typical example, besides the $333 a square foot, is furniture. They allow so much per student. It's like $1,200 per student or something, but it costs $3,000 per student for furniture. So that's another item that we'll have in the budget as 3 million, but they'll only give us 1 or 2 million towards that, and the rest of it we have to pick up. So it's a lot of items like that.
Yes, I was wondering because essentially. We have, and I understand, they're not covering everything, but out of $132 million, we need to come up with 71 million. And that's, I think that's the 46% that you mentioned.
Okay.
You're muted, Mark.
I'm sorry, I'm muted. The maximum MSBA contribution will be 58 to 61 million, depending on the makeup of these costs. But that's the maximum we're going to receive, which is equivalent to 46%, and we have to come up with a 71 million.
Which include that's what you when you're talking about that, that's basically what you're saying, that is the 46%.
That's right. It's comprised of the cap of $333 and other items that are capped. And the MSBA takes all of the cost components that equal the 132 million, and they say, well, we'll cover, the $333 cap is limited to this. So you have to incur the rest of the construction costs and all the other detailed items here. There's a listing of probably 40, 50 line items here. In each one of those line items, there's the MSBA share and the city share. So, and they have a bunch of calculations on how they develop that.
Do you have?
It's part of your package.
Okay, that's a spreadsheet that you're talking about here. Okay.
Yeah, it's this one. If it's it's 2 pages long, and this is the bottom where it has the summary. So it's in your packet.
Yep. All right. No more questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Rodriguez. Are there other councilors with questions at this time? See none at this time.
Yeah, I don't have a question, but I just want to make a motion and send it to the full council with a favorable recommendation.
I second it.
All right, there's a motion to send it to the council with a favorable recommendation. It is seconded. I did commit to the public to open it up for public comment.
Yeah, we can definitely take the vote after that. After the public participation.
Okay, so Mr. Payano, could you withdraw your motion if
So, I mean, just, can we just do it with discussion? So I didn't say it,
no, I know.
other folks want to speak, that's fine. It was more of a, just putting the motion there. So when we're ready, we're good to go.
All right. So at this time, I will, with Mr. LaPlante not here to correct me, I will open it up for public participation. Any Laurentian that wishes, oh, there he is, that wishes to speak. I do see we are joined this evening by our most recently former Mayor Emeritus, Dan Rivera. Mr. Mayor, did you have Did you wish to make any comments this evening?
Thank you so much, Mr. Vice Chair. You know, I learned a long time ago, if you're going to get the votes, you just be quiet and get out the way. So I don't want to slow this process down, but I did want to just add that we do appreciate the support that the council has given to this project so far. These are not easy questions. These are not an easy situation. I just wanted you to hear from me. I come to you not as the former mayor, but I really as a member of the Lawrence, education, the receivership board, the LAE board, and a taxpayer. And I wanted to encourage you to do the things that you've been doing, asking the right tough questions. Just to tell you things that this is a project that we really do have to fund. Another thing that comes up in things that are not that MSBA doesn't pay for is the actual connection of the building to the grid. Those big silver boxes that connects us to the electricity, they don't pay for that. It's a lot of weird things, but the weirdest of all is the issue of the paying for the construction costs. And most other communities that have a lot of money, they don't care. They just reach into their pocket and pay the difference. So, going to the MSBA and fighting for them to change that one policy. Another policy is that if you do all this work for saving energy, you can get up to 16%, 16 points. And because we max out at 80, they don't allow us to get the points for making it even environmentally sound. So there's a couple of things that they could do. And the superintendent wrote a very strong letter to the MSBA. I would encourage this body to write an equally strong letter to the MSBA to rethink about this funding and to fight for more funding. This is something, the Arlington School was paid for almost 100% by state funding. And just to put a little bit more context about the Oliver School, just remember it is generational, but we have a new high school in South Lawrence. The South Lawrence East is new. The Gomet is new. The Partham is new. This is really the only area of the city that has not, even the Arlington School, which is probably at this point 20 years old, is newer, but nothing in the Plains and the North Common area. And this is a much needed thing, again, to put it into context. No one else cares if we do this. And so I really do appreciate your support. And I hope that this body can support Councilor Payano's motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Is there anyone else here this evening that wishes to speak on this matter before I call the vote? Mr. President.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I do appreciate the opportunity to speak. As you know, I'm relatively muted at the full council level, so I'm going to take advantage of this time where I can ask some questions and provide some comments. But my concerns regarding this bond authorization, they are significant. We're being asked to borrow more than we expected. And we can counter check this with Mr. Iannello, but when we initially planned for the school, when we were doing our capital improvement budgets and we were doing something with the Collins Center and they were doing some forecasting, I believe that the preliminary estimates that we were looking to kind of like earmark was about maybe a little less than $50 million. And now we're looking at a price tag of $132 million. We're left with this understanding that we just had a discussion about this 80%. And I think that it was really good because we realized that it's not really 80%. It's going to be much less than 80%. And the mayor just spoke about, 100% or numbers north of that. And I was around for some of those votes back years ago on some of the schools that the mayor mentioned. But when we're looking to be paying between 50 and $60 million, or the Commonwealth's looking to spend between 50 and $60 million according to the CAFO, and then the city is paying roughly a ballpark of maybe 75 million. That's clearly less than that 80%. And I think that one of the previous speakers mentioned that it's less than 50% actually. And this is, as you know, this will be placing a tremendous strain on the Lawrence property owners and with a significant tax increase. And if you look again at the CAFO's comments, he states that this is going to increase the tax levy, or we're going to have to dip really hard into the free cash reserves to come up for this money, We have become really reliant, and with the previous mayor's great leadership, we built up this free cash reserves. And with that, we were able to pay for a lot of things. Some of the things were required, and some of the things were really good things that we were doing as good partners in government. But some of the things that were key, and I'll just a quick list. I mean, there was a tremendous wind damage back in 2018. We went to this area to bring about $500,000 to pay for that. We every year relied on this free cash to pay for snow removal. As you know, we have 100,000 put in our budget, but the snow removal is almost always north of $1 million every year. We have done some emergency heating repairs, I believe, for the schools back in 2018. We had a real shortage in our trash pickup accounts. We had to pick that up from free cash for $500,000. The list goes on and on and on. And I actually have the list, and I'd be happy to give to you. I asked the budget and finance director for a list of the expenditures that we've had from free cash to give us some context. And I'm happy to share that information with all the council if they so choose. So we have an idea. If we're going to go with the tax levy or we're going to go with free cash, what are those impacts going to be? And all this comes back, and I've been banging this drum for as long as all of you remember, which is the housing boom in our city. It's a housing boom, 2,000 new units. I've said it over and over and over again. We have not done our growth smartly. And we're still going through a population growth. We're still growing our city. And so the Oliver Partnership School may not be enough. It may not be. And frankly, this Oliver Partnership School, we're paying $132 million, and we're getting a school that still has flaws with it. I mean, we're not going to talk about parking tonight, I guess, but we talked about that earlier. But we know that doesn't have enough for where the students, where the teachers are going to park, where the parents are going to park, more congestion along that Haverhill Street and those areas. We're paying premium prices, and we're not getting everything we should be getting with a school at $132 million. And so when we take a vote on this, and we'll probably end up passing it, we're going to be paying more taxes, and you should be asking the budget and finance director, if we go forward with this and we're depending on taxes, what is the average taxpayer going to be paying if we go forward with this? What's the ballpark on that? We should know that, right? And then the last thing I would say is that not only are we looking at these expenditures, which are an awful lot of money, and we just put this into our minds as we think about what we're facing in the near future. We have not raised our water rates in 2009. That is a bill that's becoming due. There's going to be a perfect storm of raising the water rates and raising taxes all at the same time. And the question I have to ask you is, if we're getting a school that is less than what we need or what we should be getting, is it fair to be putting all this pressure and strain on the taxpayers when we're going to have to go back out again and add perhaps an additional school? So those are my comments. I appreciate everybody's work on this. It's not an easy discussion, because I do think that there's an important need for schools in our city because of the tremendous population growth that we are facing. But we need to be smart about how we do this. And that's my question. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. President. Any further comments or questions from citizens of Lawrence or anyone here this evening? Hearing none. There's been a motion made by Mr. Payano, and it's been seconded by Mr. Rodriguez. Any further discussion? I would also note, before I do call the vote, that we've been joined by Councilor Anna Levy, a member of the Budget and Finance Committee.
Thank you.
With that, I will ask the clerk to call the roll. Mr. Garcia, sir.
Councilor Rodriguez,
I vote yes.
Councilor Pagano,
Yes.
Councilor Levy,
Can you repeat the vote, please? The motion?
The
It's a vote.
motion is to send to the full council with a recommendation, item number 4221, the approval of all of the school funding in the amount of $132,300,000.
Yes.
And Chairman Abdul.
And the chair votes yes. That is unanimous, Superintendent. Thank you, and best wishes to the team next Tuesday. It will be a long evening. I'm not sure how the president's going to manage it, but we have a couple of very big items next Tuesday.
Can I just comment, Counselor? This requires a public hearing. So, I don't know if that needed to be included in your vote, but of approval, but it does require a public hearing. So it goes on to the next council agenda to order a public hearing because it's a bond authorization.
Yeah.
And then it'll come back to the council for at the public hearing and a vote.
Yes, let's have an additional vote to.
That vote is to order public hearing, I guess. Right, Paul?
There's a motion by Councilor Rodriguez, and I believe it was seconded by Mr. Payano to call for a public hearing next Tuesday on this matter. Is there any discussion?
Mr. Chair, for us to call a public, is it to have the city council call for a public hearing or for us to call a public hearing?
We're sending it to.
We're sending it to the city council, give a recommendation, and so that they, so the city council can order a public hearing.
Yeah,
That's correct. That is correct. Is there any discussion? Hearing no discussion, Mr. Garcia, please call the roll.
Counselor Rodriguez,
yes.
Counselor Payano,
Yes.
Counselor Levy,
Yes.
and Chairman Abdul.
The chair votes yes. Thank you for that clarification, Mr. Rodriguez, Mr. Payano, and Mr. Iannello. Public hearing is called. So with that, and thank you to all the members of the school system and all of our colleagues from the architects, the construction manager, and the state. Thank you.
Thank you all. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good night.
Thank you.
Before we get to the next item, a couple of housekeeping issues. I want to note at the beginning of this meeting, I did not call a roll of attendance. For the record, I want to state, since we can't turn back the clocks, Mr. Garcia, it is this evening, it's the chairman this evening being myself. I want to recognize the fact that we began the meeting with Councilor Rodriguez, Councilor Abdu, and President LaPlante. And that was the roll at 6:30. So my apologies to those here and those at home. That was a housekeeping issue. It's my job and didn't get it done. The other thing is, before we move on to item number 1921, I need to relinquish the gavel as the vice chairman, and I would turn it over to Mr. Payano, sir, as I believe. Okay, Mr. LaPlante.
Chairman, I would
Mr. Chair,
recommend that you send that to the most senior member, and I believe that to be Mr. Rodriguez.
and also if Mr. Councilor Levy is here. Okay. Got it.
Mr. Rodriguez, would you accept the gavel?
I accept the gavel, but before I do that, I need to have things clear. I won't be able to vote on this. I'll be able to engage into a conversation, but not voting. So.
Which, interesting, Mr. Chairman, it puts me in an interesting position because I'm only here to provide a quorum. If Mr. Rodriguez is here and has the gavel and is going to be engaged in discussion, you already have a quorum, and I am unnecessary. So if Mr. Rodriguez will need to make a decision whether he's going to recuse himself completely, in which case.
At one point that has to happen, yes.
Pardon me?
At one point that's going to happen. So I prefer Mr. Payano to take us since the beginning.
Okay.
And that way I don't have to do that. I just excuse myself out of the vote.
Mr. Chairman, as some guidance, the individual is not required to take the gavel. He certainly can defer, and it appears as though that's what's happening here. So I believe Mr. Payano is the next senior person on the committee. And so, Mr. Chairman, if you really want to relinquish the gavel to Mr. Payano, you certainly would be in order to do that.
Thank you, Mr. President. It is my intention to relinquish the gavel. Ms. Payano, do you accept? Thank you, Mr. Payano. Thank you, Mr. Rodriguez, and thank you, Mr. LaPlante.
So thank you, Mr. Chair. So is there a motion to take item 1921 out of order?
Second,
I mean, out of table matters. So there's a motion. Is there a second?
I say second.
Yes, no, there has to be a motion first, but it requires a second.
So the motion is to take item 9220.
I don't think it's gonna work, to be honest with you. Because I'm voting for it, or second it.
So if you can't second it, Counselor, then it won't work. If you second it, there's a vote. If you recuse, that's two. No. So it's not moving forward. So
Put the full council as an old business as we tried before, and that way we can discuss it at that
so
level.
Counselor Abdu, I give back the gavel to you. And we will take this as a old business at the next meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Payano, for stepping in.
So
the brief here.
Yeah. So Mr. Chair, what I'll say is I'll apologize for Mr. Miller. I feel like now looking back, we probably could have just done that addition earlier on and figure that one out. I feel like I'm in the second grade right now. So my apologies, sir.
No apologies necessary. I thank you for taking the effort to go through this.
Yeah, come next Tuesday. I'll make them. I'll make the motion to take it out. So
I'll see everybody next Tuesday night.
And I'll take the privilege of the chair to once again point out the fact that Mr. Miller has got the finest virtual background of any official in Lawrence.
I love it under the bridge. All right. Good evening, councilors.
Thank you, Mr. Miller.
Take care.
Is there any other table matter that any councilor would like to bring up this evening, or are there any other motions?
a motion to adjourn.
Second.
There's a motion to adjourn by Mr. Payano. It was seconded by Mr. Rodriguez. All those in favor?
Aye.
Mr. Garcia, call the roll, please.
Councilor Rodriguez,
Yes.
Councilor Pajano,
Yes.
Councilor Levy,
Yes.
and Chairman Abdul.
And the chair votes yes. And that's 4-0. We are adjourned. Thank you to my colleagues. Thank you, Mr. Garcia, and thank you to Mr. Mejia behind the scenes. And good night, everyone. Please be safe.
Good night.
Aye.
Bye.